So this is the overburden panel itself, and there'll be 3 different valves on here. There's an actual valve on the pump itself. This is a check valve, so to the right it closes it, and then back to the left it releases it. And then you have a 2-core holder and then a bleed reservoir, so when you're filling it up. You also have a little top on here. You have a closed, vent, and open. When you're running this, most of the time you want to have this on and you want to have it in the vent spot. So the first thing you're going to do though is take your sample, and then this is going to be our injection. We have a spacer in here. So here's one of our spacers because we're using this is a 3-inch sample and this is a 12-inch max. So we put in some spacers. Make sure all this is connected. All these lines are connected. There's no leaks here or anything like that. But so the first thing you're going to do is actually take your sample and put it in through the bottom. And this kind of gets a little tricky. You can do these one at a time. You're going to make sure you get it up into the sleeve there. And then once we get this started, we're going to go up a few turns and then we're going to put the top on. So this is our downstream one, and we also have a spacer on there as well. Like I said, so if you're using a longer sample, you wouldn't need these and you'd probably take these out. But so once we get these about even, we're going to just screw them in together at the same time. And then they should eventually end up meeting at the sample, so you'll get them nice and snug. You don't have to like cram them or take a spanner wrench and tighten them. You just pretty much snug them up like that. The big thing is we just don't want any gaps. And you don't want any gaps between this plug, the spacer there, or the distribution plug, or the rocks. So every one of those contact points of where they meet is a potential where it could actually break. The overburden could break that sleeve. So the idea is, like I said, it's all straight inside there. So once we have this snug, there's no gaps there. This would be full. We would have this full. Then you would actually close this valve down here. So we're going to turn it to the right. Make that nice and snug. We'll snug that up. 2-core holder will be open because we're going to pump from here. It's going to go through this valve. It's going to come in through the bottom here. It's going to fill this up. And then it's going to go through this bleed valve and then fill into this reservoir. See, and I actually already filled this, so it filled up pretty fast. You might have to pump this for a little bit, but you can see some of that air coming out through there. And then once you get about that full, you're going to actually close this valve, this overburden pressure. So this is going to lock this off. So now we're actually pumping through here, through this valve, through this port, then through this port, and then up to this valve. And we should see some pressure here. That sound is, this pump is pretty close to empty. So it's just kind of getting the last bit of oil out of there. So we're going to do a little over 2,000 or so. You can do whatever pressure you want to do. Once you get to pressure, then you're going to actually close it to this. So this 2-core holder now is closed. And you'll just snug that up. And then once this is closed, now this overburden pressure, this 2,000, is locked in between these 2 valves on either side of the core holder. So you can actually take the pressure off the pump. So that, by doing that, you're going to open that valve, you're going to turn it back, turn it to the left. So now the pump itself doesn't have any pressure, it's not going to build or do anything. So after you turn the computer on, the first thing you're going to do, you'll have 2 windows here. There's 2 things you can use. There's a WinPerm, and that's the software for it, and then Smart DP3. The first thing you're going to do is actually open the Smart DP though. So you'll double click this. this has to be open first. This is the screen that you're going to see. You have to go to main, and then you have to go to online. You have select communication and then offline and view communication errors. If there's an error, you'll see it'll be popping up. It'll say error, but obviously we don't have one right now. But so you're going to go online. You'll actually see it takes a second for it to read. You're going to hit get on each one of these. So this is your low range and this is your high range for your, this is for the differential pressure transducers. So they should be set at 9 and 300, but you'll hit get. And if you don't get a 9 here, that means you have a communication error. Also, it'll already be showing it, but so you'll know you're getting a good signal when it actually gets it. Same thing, we'll do it for the high here. And this one should be 300. So now we have 299.98. If you wanted to rearrange these, the maxes are 9 in 300, but like let's say if you wanted to do 5, so the max range now that the Rosemount would be looking at is 5 volt or 5 psi, you could set this now. It'll take a second. And then now we've set that at 5, and if you hit get, it should read 5. So there you go, it's at 5. But again, we're going to do 9. So the DPs actually come in through these USB, these Viatar USBs. So if I unplug one of these, this is that USB I unplugged, we should get an error in a second. There we go. So view error, that's the error you'll get. And it should say, maybe it doesn't. But anyways, you'll get an error. And this is the low DP. You can see that now it's all zeros when I've unplugged it. You're going to get all zeros because there's no communication. There's another key thing too. If you go into the computer, you go into Device Manager. So in Device Manager here too, they're going to come in the COM ports here. So if you go into COM ports, you're going to see the Viatar. Here's one of them. So this is the high. This is number 4. It shows COM 4. And we'll plug in now the other one. So now you have COM 3. So that's the low, COM 3 and COM 4. If you have an error and it's still arrowing, if you go into test, if you go in the test configure and you go to change COM ports, this is where you say these have to match up. So we have 3 and 4, but anytime you plug in or unplug a USB port, it can change the COM port here. So you can change it here if you go into the actual properties here. If you go to port settings and then go to advanced, you have your COM port right here, and you can actually change the COM port there. Or you can actually just do it in the software here. So if you wanted to change this, there's only 1 through 10 here. So if it comes in, potentially it could come in as like COM 11 or 12. You'd have to actually change it over here. Okay, so also what I like to do too, you see you'll have some nominal small number here, 0.02, 0.0. You can zero these out through this software. Once everything is working here, now you'll actually open WinPerm. So we'll double click WinPerm. This is your actual software. So these 3 right here are your flow meters. You have a low, medium, and high. For this particular unit, I think it's 0 to 10 SCCMs, and then it's 0 to 500 and 0 to 5,000. And then you have your inlet pressure up here. So when it's in red, that means it's out of range essentially. And then also this green box is the valve that's in front of the flow meter. So depending on the flow, the corresponding valve will open to read the flow through that meter. And then down these 2 are going to be your actual low DPs and your high DP. And then this PSIG is the actual inlet pressure itself. So the first thing that you have to do is go to File, and you'll have to you'll open a file or have to create a new file. So if you hit New, this is what you'll see. And then you'll have a file name, and you can put whatever name you want. I think today's the 22nd. And then you can fill out well name, all these different indications. This will all show up. You have to choose these as well. So barometric pressure in units. These are all going to be units. The depth in meters, feet. So you can essentially do whatever you would like there. So we'll hit OK. Once you hit OK, now you'll have to actually fill out the sample data in here. So the sample ID is going to be if for some reason too, so you'll hit measure perm here. If you don't have everything filled in, it's going to prompt you. So it'll tell you all the things that you're missing. So you have to have the diameter, the barometric pressure again, temperature, number of pressures. So you can do multiple pressure points here. That would also be like in the Klinkenberg. You have a single point or a Klinkenberg. Generally, when you do Klinkenberg, you would do multiple points. You might do 5 points. You would do 5 points here. But I'm going to do 1 point. And then you have NCS, which is net confining stress. So this is your net confining, and it's whatever that is. And then that's the only thing that you need. You have sample type here, plug. So this is like we're running a plug, whole core or check plug. Generally, a plug is like a core sample. So that's most of the time what you'll be running is plug. And then you have perm direction. It's vertical for us. And then you would actually hit measure perm when you're ready to start. Said note before making blah, blah, that the system should be on for at least 20 minutes. That's so all the transducers are warmed up. You just hit OK. And it'll actually start actively measuring. And then I haven't started any of the flow or anything like that, so obviously it'll be 0. So after you hit measure, you can actually, you'll probably start, this is your low pressure regulator and your high pressure regulator, and this is your back pressure regulator. Right now, so this is with 0 back pressure, we're just going to do a regular test. You put this in bypass. So the idea is that you're bypassing this regulator, so there's no restriction. You'll start with your low, and then you'll slightly increase the pressure. I don't know if you can see on the software here. So that just switched now to the medium flow because it went too high. So for the sake of this test, I moved the monitor up much closer. So right now we're going to be injecting gas with a low pressure regulator here. So as you can see, we don't have any flow. If you were to go to each one of these transducers with your mouse and you double click on the actual transducer there, you'll get a little pop-up window essentially saying to 0 that transducer. That one was already 0, but so if we 0 this one, again, it'll 0 it, and then we'll 0 this one. And you want to make sure, obviously, you have no flow while you're doing this. If you take your mouse and you hover over that box for that transducer, they'll actually show the voltage of the transducer of what it's actually outputting there. So right now it's putting out 0.08 volts, which is obviously like nothing, but it'll also show it right here too. So these are your voltages coming from each transducer here. Okay, so now that you've zeroed everything, you're actually just going to increase some flow here. And you should see it coming from this low flow. So you already see a little bit of voltage. And then we're at 0.9. So most of these run between like 0 and 5 and 0 and 4 point something. So again, this is pretty low voltage, pretty low flow too for this transducer. This is a higher permeable sample. So I'm just giving a little bit here. And then this graph right here is actually going to be your DP and your flow here. So obviously when flow increases, your DP will go up as well too. So we're just starting to get some DP. It's like I said, it's very, very low. It's 0.07, 0.1 now. So it's going up. And we've actually, the software automatically switched into the medium flow meter as well. So we're at 2.4. And then this is our real-time permeability measurement right here. So this is in millidarcy. So like I said, this is a pretty permeable sample. So you want stability, obviously, when measuring. So you would wait for these little check marks to be, it's a blue little check. So it makes a little check on every little reading. And you'll see them start to disappear. So you can see these little blue checks disappearing. So after X amount of time, I think it's like 30 seconds of that reading, it'll disappear. So you'll see them old ones. Those are all the old ones disappearing. There's an actual reset button here as well, which you could just reset it if you wanted to wait, if you didn't want to wait, I should say. But you should kind of wait for it to stabilize. Like I said, you'll see like one little blue X. Depending on the sample too, it can take longer or shorter to actually stabilize. So if you're using back pressure as well on, like say you're doing a Klinkenberg test and you use the back pressure, it will take much longer to stabilize. The perm shouldn't change too much even waiting for it to stabilize. It should be a real-time measurement. And what such a permeable sample, this might take a long time. Like I said, you can always hit reset though, so to reset this graph. So now you're just looking, you can see just that blue X. It's kind of moving a little bit. Like I said, so every couple seconds it's making a new X. So you can see it's not quite stabilizing. That's why it looks a little blurry, because it is moving around a little. But like I said, if you notice that your permeability, it hasn't changed much. So if you hit proceed to next, it'll actually put it down here in this graph. So if you actually like this, you can say include, yes or no. We'll hit yes. We'd like this data. This is going to give you all your information on it, your DP, upstream pressure, P1, P2, P mean, your flow rate, Q, and then your permeability. You'll hit accept here, and it'll actually put it in this graph down here. And this is where you want it. So like, let's say we were done with our test and we turn off our gas, and everything. When you're done and you go close this file, you can either hit close this file, so hit close, or you can do HTML report. So it'll give you this little HTML report. If you hit the UltraPerm fields, it'll give you everything for UltraPerm. Some of this stuff you might not want, or you do want, you can check it or not check it. And then if you hit OK, it's obviously going to bring up an HTML report of your test itself. And this is where it's going to be saved in the data file. But let's say if we want to close this file anyways, if you hit close, it'll say, do you want to generate an HTML report right now? And you'll hit yes, and it'll give you the same window. So here we are again. And then if you actually go into this will be on your desktop too, but if you go into WinPerm, this data here, this is where all your data is going to be for all your tests, whatever you've labeled them as.